Hello everyone, welcome to Sports Insider. I am Dan Labbe, he is Chris Fedor. As always, lots to talk about today. We're going to lead it off with Mary Kay Cabot, our Browns beat reporter. Then Paul Hoynes will join us from Goodyear, Arizona to talk some Indian spring training. You and I are going to talk Cavs Warriors, the biggest regular season game of the year so far. And then, of course, Bud Shaw will wrap it all up, batting cleanup today with his spinoffs at the end of the show. But let's get right to it. Let's bring in Mary Kay Cabot. Mary Kay, how are you?
I'm great, guys. How you doing?
We're doing well. Okay, so it sounds like Josh McCown, at least according to reports, is in negotiations with Buffalo to become their new quarterback. Do you think the Browns were ever legitimately in this thing to get Josh McCown? And are you surprised there was even a Josh McCown derby?
Well, you know what? As of last night, even as late as 5 or 6 o'clock, they were still in the running. So I don't know if they're going. Sometimes you go back and forth with a couple of teams before you settle on a contract with someone. So I've been trying to find out if they are talking to the Browns as well right now, and I haven't had any word back on that yet. But it could be a situation where you get into a little bit of a bidding war.
Mary Kay, the other option for the Browns, if they want to improve at quarterback, draft is always there, but so is a trade. The Browns this offseason have been linked to a couple of different guys. Sam Bradford from St. Louis, Mike Glennon from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What can you tell us about those conversations?
Well, you know what? I did not get the vibe at all at the Combine that the Rams were willing to trade Sam Bradford. I mean, I think they came out pretty strongly saying, we don't want to delete him, and we're counting on him. Actually, Jeff Fisher said that. I mean, if you are counting on him and you don't want teams to shy away from him, then I don't know if you would say those kind of things. So I believe them that they really don't intend to trade him. Now, at the right price, of course, anything can happen. But I don't know. I haven't been able to pin down how the Browns really feel about Sam Bradford, or if they would try to make a strong pitch for him. But from the outside looking in, I just don't see. That you would want to make a really strong pitch, $13 million next year. Last year of a contract for a guy coming off back-to-back ACLs.
Mary Kay, what do you think that cost would be? Because, if I'm looking at it and St. Louis says I want one of those first-rounders, I'm probably saying no way. Do you think it would be that expensive, or could it be cheaper to get him?
I wouldn't do a first-rounder. I wouldn't do that. I mean, I suppose that's what they would want. But maybe a second rounder, but I definitely wouldn't do a first. And I'm guessing that would be probably their asking price. The Browns have 12 and 19, but I can't see them doing that.
Mary Kay, the Browns also have their own decisions to make on some of their own free agents. I've been listening to Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, Mike Mayock from the NFL Network. The thing that they continue to say is that this cornerback class in the NFL draft is weak, and that means free agency at cornerback could be a position that heats up. What does that mean for Buster Skrine, and is Buster Skrine the kind of guy that the Browns want to bring back?
They do want to bring him back, and I will be writing something about that later this afternoon, but they do want to bring him back, but it's not going to be that easy. Buster Skrine is attracting a lot of attention. And there are a lot of teams, I think, that will want a Buster Skrine, not just to be a nickel, but to be probably a starting cornerback. That's kind of how he will be viewed out there. So I think he's going to come at a pretty expensive price tag. And if the Browns really want to keep him, maybe they'll let the market set his price and then go ahead and try to match it.
Of the Browns' own free agents, Mary Kay, Buster Skrine, Jordan Cameron, Jabal Sheard, Ataba Rubin, do you sense that Skrine is number one on their priority list internally?
I would think so. Yeah, I would think so. Good cornerbacks are hard to find. I don't get the sense that they're rushing to sign Jordan Cameron. I don't get the sense that there's a big sense of urgency for any of the guys, although I know they'd like to re-sign Miles Austin. But yeah, I would say that Buster is one of their priorities, and that they will, they'll probably see what he can get on the open market, and then maybe go ahead and try to match it or just exceed it a little bit.
Mary Kay, I'm seeing a lot of mock drafts that have the Browns going wide receiver with one of those first two picks, and It's not really in Ray Farmer's DNA, at least from what we know, to pick a wide receiver in the first round. But that being said, even if they don't move up, even if they're at 12, they're going to have a shot at somebody really good at that position. Do you think there's any chance that if a Kevin White is there, Devontae Parker, if Amari Cooper falls, that Ray Farmer could kind of go out of character and grab one of those guys?
Yeah, I think so. Last year they were set to take Sammy Watkins at number 4 if it came down to that and they weren't able to make a trade. So I do think that he would do it. And you know what? I think, times have changed, and I think that, back in the day, maybe even 5-6 years ago, you weren't really supposed to take receivers that high. But that has changed. Mm-hmm. The game has changed itself. The rules have changed. And it's become more of a passing league. So now those receivers are at a premium, and they can change the direction of your football team if you get a really good one. So I do think that they could look at a receiver at number 12.
Mary Kay, the whole logo reveal thing wasn't as exciting as maybe some people were hoping it was going to be. Do you think when the Browns reveal their new jerseys, at least, there's going to be a little bit more excitement? Maybe they're going to do something a little more than just change the hue of orange?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, Alex Shiner described it. We had sort of like a behind closed door session with Alec the other day, the beat writers did, and he basically said that the change in the uniforms will be more radical than the change in the logo, which I think is good. So hopefully there will be something to get excited about, something to give the fans something to really cheer about there with the new uniforms. I, for one, tweeted this out yesterday. I've gotten a lot of negative feedback on it and some positive. But I like they call it the action green on the Seahawks uniforms. I love it. I would love to see some neon orange on the Browns uniforms. Now, that would be really radical, and I have no idea if they would even consider that. Probably not. But you know what? It's new times. It's 2015, and you want to attract the younger audience and young people that haven't seen any winning Browns football, and I think something like that would be really cool.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot joining us on Sports Insider. Thanks for the time, Mary Kay.
Thank you, guys.
Those new helmets.
Oh yeah. Terrific.
Orange just pops. Brown face mask. It was, I think, although I'll say this, you had a lot of fans leading up to the release that were like, don't touch the helmets, don't touch the helmets. Yeah. And they essentially didn't touch the helmets. Right. And a lot of those same fans were like, what?
Yeah. I mean, but the logo, so the whole idea behind the logo, they said, was that when they're on the TV and they're showing the Browns, it's not just going to be like a splotch of orange. That was the whole idea, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You're still going to see a splotch of orange. It's just going to be a different color orange. Now, I will say this, the font, written in Cleveland Browns, the font has changed, Dan. So that's another big change that they made.
It is 2015 orange. All right, let's talk some Indians. Let's bring in our Indians beat reporter from Arizona, Paul Hoynes. Hoynes, though, I got to ask you, what do you think of that great new Browns logo?
I'd like to have that job. Whoever designed that. For 2 years you're doing that, and you kind of sit in your rear end, and okay, let's just change the shade a little bit.
Remember back in the day, Hoynesy, where you would just go into Microsoft Paint, and you would get the paint bucket, and you'd try and fill in the lines with a certain color, and then if you didn't like it, you just hit Control-Z, and then you go back and you find a different color. I feel like for the last 2 years, somebody just sat there in Microsoft Paint with a paint bucket and tried different shades of orange, and was like, oh, there's the one. That one popped to me.
I like the brown face card, the face man, but I don't know why the big mystery about that. I mean, if they did that and they just changed the face mask, okay. But if it was, I mean, you could even tell the difference. You would have to be looking for the difference, even if they rolled that out without any fans there,
All right, Hoynesy, let's talk Indians. A guy that I'm really fascinated with this season, Carlos Carrasco, had a great second half last year. Bounced back and forth between the bullpen and started, but his ERA, once he settled into that starting rotation, was 1.30. How good can Carlos Carrasco be this season?
Well, he's probably not going to be as good as those 10 starts that we saw. But I think the key for him, is obviously staying in the rotation from day one and being consistent from wire to wire, staying healthy. And can he do that? And, I think we got a pretty good indication that, he's over the Tommy John surgery. Maybe he's getting his head together. He pitched very well out of the bullpen. He found a routine that fit him, and he took it right back into the rotation when they put him in August. And he pitched great. I mean, like Terry Francona said, he might have been one of the best pitcher in the big leagues, going down the stretch from August to the end of the year.
Hoynesy, now that you've been out in Arizona, obviously things really haven't ramped up yet for the Indians or any team in spring training. But being out there, what is the thing that has stood out to you about this team? Is there a different vibe around this team? Is there a different kind of energy? Fill us in here.
Well, I think the thing that's kind of jumped out at me early is, a couple players that had question marks over their head. Brandon Moss looks very good. Looks like he's going to be ready to open the season. He's hitting on the field yesterday for the first time. He was running sprints, and not just kind of half-speed sprints the other day, but full out. He was cutting on the hip. He showed power when he took BP in the field. So, I'm encouraged about that. I think he's going to be okay. The same with Jason Kipnis, with the abdominal and the hamstring and the finger in the off season. He looks good. I mean, he's not letting it go in BP yet. I think he's still got to work up to that. But, if he misses maybe the first or second spring training game, that's probably going to be about it. I think he'll be playing regularly after that. Michael Bourne has run well. He has no restrictions on him. Those kind of things are encouraging, I think.
Hoynesy, as we're gearing up for the season and people start to roll out their predictions, I'm not seeing a lot of people necessarily picking the Indians to win their division, but I'm seeing a lot of people calling them sleepers and a team to watch. Why do you think people are maybe not super high on the Indians, but high enough to say, keep an eye on this team?
Well, I think the way they pitched in the second half especially, I think that makes them, kind of a prominent team in people's eyes, a team that, might surprise some people. I think, the fact that they didn't do a whole lot during the winter, is probably keeping people from really saying they're going to win the division, they're going to be a wild card, but that they aren't, very much more than, a dark horse, a guy, a surprise team. And offensively they did struggle last year, especially in the second half. And they really, there's still some question marks about key guys. A guy like Swisher, is he gonna play? Is he gonna be ready? And right now he's running controlled sprints. He's taking BP, but we still don't know if he can play every day or if he's a full-time DH, or if he's a first baseman, if he's a right fielder.
Hoynesy, is there a move out there that the Indians could make, that they'd be willing to make between now and the start of the regular season, that could take them from sleeper to maybe a favorite in the AL Central?
Well, I think, I don't know. I mean, they're not going to, like we've talked before, they're not going to make a big move, a big splashy move like Cole Hamels or something like that. I just don't think they have the payroll to do it. They're not willing to pay that, and they're probably not willing to give up what it would take to get a guy like that. I think there's probably a guy out there like I keep talking. They have talked about Dion Viciado, the free agent from the White Sox. They've kept in touch with his agents, but the only way he would come to camp here would be on a minor league deal, and I think that's probably the only kind of move they'd make at this time. But when you're looking down the road here at the end of camp, they're going to have to make some kind of move. With David Murphy or Ryan Rayburn, all those guys aren't going to make the club. I mean, they've got a cluster of them, between first base and right field and DH.
Speaking of first base, is it going to help Carlos Santana this year that's where he's going to be? He's not going to have to learn how to play third. He's not going to have to deal with being a catcher. He's at first base.
Yeah, I think that's a big key for him. We saw him settle down after he moved off at third, and Lonnie took over for him at third, and he moved across the diamond to first base. We saw him kind of find a groove offensively, and I think the big thing is he's not catching. He really got beat up catching wise. He had 2 concussions in about 3 or 4 years. Sandy Alomar always said that the reason he got hit so much is that he set up a little deeper behind the plate than most catchers. And so the foul balls, instead of hitting his glove, were hitting him or his mask.
Hoynes, you mentioned that logjam at right field, or in the outfield just in general, with Rayburn and Swisher and Moss, Murphy. If they do decide to maybe move one of those guys and address another position of weakness, which position do you think they would target?
I think they go after a bullpen arm. I really do. I think there's some concern there, just because of the way they pitched. They've used that pen the last 2 years. I think they look for a guy like that. I mean, they've got some options in camp, Swarzak and Downs, some veteran guys. But I think they would be looking in that area. I think, that the infield, they've got a bunch of guys there. They've got some depth at middle infield. They've got, the first base, third base. Maybe a third. They've got Urshela, too. So Chisenhall and Urshela are at third. They're set at catcher. So I would think it'd be a pitcher.
All right, Hoynes, enjoy Arizona. It is nice and warm there. It is not warm here. Thanks for your time.
Stay warm, guys.
Oh, thanks. We'll try.
Paul Hoynes joining us from Goodyear, Arizona. Our next guest, this guy right here. We're going to talk some Cavs. The Cavs and Warriors facing off, and we can call it a possible finals preview at this point. And Chris, I'll give you this. If you take the pace the Cavs have been playing at over the last 19, you project it out over 82, they're a 73-win team.
There you go.
See?
I'd be right on the money. Yes. Another prediction that I nailed.
All right, Cavs Warriors tonight.
Yep.
Big game. Ultimately, it is just a regular season game. But which team do you think this is a bigger game for?
I think it's a bigger game for the Cavs. Because I still think one of the things that some fans, and maybe even internally the Cavs want to know about themselves is how do they stack up against the best of the best when the best of the best have all of their guys. Some of the signature wins that the Cavs have, they do come with an asterisk. It's the reality of life in the NBA. Injuries are going to happen, but you would like to see the Cavs be able to beat a complete Golden State team, especially when they're at home. That would give you a lot of confidence moving forward because the Cavs have beaten a team like Toronto, but Toronto didn't have DeMar DeRozan. The Cavs have beaten Memphis, but when they beat Memphis, Memphis didn't have Zach Randolph or Tony Allen, 2 key pieces to their team. So if they beat a team like Golden State here at home, it just makes you feel even better about what they've been able to accomplish here in the last 3 weeks.
LeBron James came out and said that he feels like this team, as it's constituted now, can win a championship. We haven't heard that kind of bold talk yet this season. Is LeBron kind of setting the tone now from what he expects here moving forward?
Yeah, I think so. And I think LeBron understands here in the final 25-plus games, Dan, what they really mean. They might just be regular season games, but it's a way to gear up for the postseason and feel the kind of pressure that some of these guys are going to feel in the postseason. So I think you see a different attitude with LeBron, and I think it goes beyond just him being healthy right now. I think he finally looks around at this team, and he was in Miami, and he went to 4 straight finals, and he won 2 championships. And Dan, he understands what it takes to win a championship and the kind of players that you have to have as teammates. And I think now, because the Cavs made those trades and the addition of Kendrick Perkins, I think LeBron James looks around, he sees the teammates, and he says, yep, this team is good enough to win a championship. And I think if you would have asked him that question, giving him some truth serum about 2 months ago, he would have said no.
And Kendrick Perkins, you just mentioned him, adding him as kind of that backup big man. Ultimately, what are your expectations out of Perkins? How much better does he make this basketball team? He's not going to score, but he's going to bring some attitude. He's a bad dude.
Yes.
Is that kind of his role? Come in and throw his body around?
That's exactly right. And I asked Kyrie Irving in the locker room following the game against Detroit on Tuesday, I said, What are the expectations for Kendrick Perkins? What is his role going to be? He said, we're just going to ask him to be Perk and do the things that we know he can do. The same thing that David Blatt is going to ask of him is the same thing that Scott Brooks asked of him in Oklahoma City and what Doc Rivers asked of him in Boston. Bring the toughness, bring the physicality, set good screens offensively, be a big-bodied guy defensively. And Dan, they just want him to be a backup, maybe a little bit more than an insurance policy to Timofey Mozgov.
Yeah.
And I think you saw in that final game before the All-Star break, and yeah, the Cavs didn't have Kevin Love in that game, but you saw what can happen to this team if Mozgov gets in foul trouble. Before the Cavs got Perk, the same guy that was backing up Kevin Love was backing up Mozgov. It was Tristan Thompson. Yeah. Now you actually have a legitimate backup center. And for all the fans, I mean, you just have to put into perspective what Kendrick Perkins is going to bring, and I think you have to be honest about your own expectations. There wasn't a lot out there for the Cavs, and they needed somebody to be a reliable backup to Timofey Mozgov, and now they have that. But if Perkins plays 20, 25 minutes, Dan, in a playoff game or towards the end of this regular season, then the Cavs are probably going to be in trouble because he can't do that anymore. He's on the wrong side of 30. He was bought out by Utah for a reason. He was beat out as the starting center by Steven Adams in Oklahoma City for a reason. But just be honest about the things that he can bring you, and I think the Cavs are.
One of the things, when you look at the moves this team has made, adding Iman Shumpert and J.R. Smith, adding Mozgov, adding Perkins, it's allowed guys like, so it allows Kyrie Irving now. He doesn't have to worry about being that lockdown wing defender.
Right.
He's gotten better defensively, but now he can just be Kyrie Irving. Kevin Love doesn't have to be that big, tough guy in the middle anymore. Yeah. He can go back to being the Kevin Love that we know, a guy that can get rebounds, a guy that can hit threes and stretch the floor and work in the post. A lot of these moves have freed up the star players to kind of do what they do best.
Yep. And you know what, Dan? That's the mark of a championship contending team, because you have guys in roles that not only are they okay with, but roles that they can go out and execute. At the beginning of the season, the Cavs were asking Dion Waiters to be a standstill catch-and-shoot guy. That's not him. Yeah. He's not a great shooter. Dion Waiters' best shooting season is probably going to be the worst shooting season for J.R. Smith. They're just different guys. They have different skill sets. And that's exactly what it is. You have guys that understand their role, but they can go out and they can execute that role. And that's what you need if you want to be a champion. That's why Golden State is so good. Dan, I truly believe Harrison Barnes could go somewhere on a worse team, probably average 16 to 18 points per game. He's averaging 10 points per game in Golden State. Why? Because that's all they're asking him to do. They're asking him to space the floor, be a knockdown three-point shooter, and every now and then, if he has to, create some offense for himself. Andre Iguodala is coming off the bench in Golden State. He's a starter in the NBA for a number of different teams out there. That's the mark of a championship contending team. That's why I've been so defensive when it comes to Kevin Love. Could he go out and score 22 to 24? Probably. But the Cavs are asking him to do a specific thing that's going to best benefit them. Same thing with J.R. Smith. Same thing with Iman Shumpert. Same thing with everybody on this roster.
All right, speaking of roles, we're going to throw it over to Bud Shaw, a guy that we put in multiple roles, going from co-host a week ago and now back to his regular role, offering his spin-offs. Bud.
My regular role, batting ninth. Well, listen, now that the excitement over the Browns' new logo has ebbed, as if it ever actually flowed, we've received some competing logos from readers. Pete and Shaker contends that this has been the logo all along. A man shooting himself in the foot. I'm not so sure about that, but it could explain what really happened to Braylon Edwards the day that the Browns claimed he was spiked running around without his shoes on. Our second submission is a comment from a reader in reply to the opinion that, quote, Hoyer should be the starter and Shaw should be the backup. The comment says that while Bud's an okay guy, he's a little too old to be playing backup in the NFL. And granted, that's true. I mean, in fact, my memory's a little bit fuzzy, but I think I recall being in the same high school graduating class as Josh McCown. Next, I wrote earlier in the week that the Browns shouldn't be too eager to play yet another game of quarterback roulette at the top of the draft. And by that I mean trading up for either Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota. My reasoning is just basic, that it's just too expensive. For the record, I'd take either guy if they were sitting there at number 12. But Sachin Scooby commented, not his real name, that I'm old and bitter and never happy with anything the Browns do, which is just not true. My age shouldn't matter at all. I was young and bitter too. I will say this, as far as what the Browns have done since 1999, for the same reason an NBA scout would find it difficult to say anything positive about the skill set of Kim Jong-un as a player, I haven't been able to find anything nice to say about this team. And finally, we always like to send you to the weekend on a positive note, and today won't be any different. We turn that task over to V. Barnes, who joined a comment thread to say, the Browns are doomed. And I'm the bitter one, guys.
But look, I mean, we've all done this before, right? Like you have an assignment or something, you have something you have to get done, and you kind of forget about it, right? And somebody comes to you and they're like, hey,
And you have that dream that you're naked
yeah.
and you're going to class.
Yeah,
No, that's
did
not
you
the
get
one.
this done? And you're like, oh, yeah, and kind of do it at the last minute. I think that's what happened with the Browns logo. I think there was some graphic designer, and like his manager came to him and is like, hey, remember that logo we asked you to work on 2 years
Is that
ago?
today?
We need that tomorrow. So he grabs like an orange marker and just goes to town.
Well, really, my theory on this is that they purposely did this. This was a preemptive strike to unveil something that is so totally traditional that when they come out with these wild uniforms, they'll be able to say, look, we paid respect to tradition with the orange, the new shade of orange in the helmet. So I think that's, because I can't think of any other reason why they would do that. You know, now I cut them a break by saying that they weren't really the ones beating the drum for it so much. They sent out an email to the Browns backers. But as I can see your finger raised.
Yes, my finger is up here, bud.
Yes. They did on their website, I know,
Exactly.
have a countdown,
Yes.
and yeah, and I think that's a fair point. They were clearly trying to rev up excitement.
Yes.
And I wasn't in the room among the media people when it was unveiled, but I'm told that the silence was deafening.
These are the events that the Browns have had countdowns for, leading up to whatever, right? They've had a countdown for the draft because they consider it a big deal.
Sure.
They've had a countdown to the opening game of the regular season because that, again, is a big deal. And they had a countdown to their logo unveil. So, yes, they contributed some of the excitement.
And think of it this way, the same level of disappointment has presided over all three of those.
That's very true.
They had that thing
unfortunately.
under lock and key. I mean, let's be honest, that building leaks like you wouldn't believe.
Yes.
But that thing, nobody could get it. I don't even know. All right, that'll do it
And
for
that's
another.
what they came up with.
That'll do it for another Sports Insider. Our thanks to Mary Kay Cabot, Paul Hoynes, Bud Shaw. He's Chris Fedor. I'm Dan Labbe. Join us again next week live at 11:30. Thanks for watching.
And thanks, Josh McCown, for picking the Bills.